Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to our video chapter annual spring seminar. And today, the theme is, of course, pieces of the puzzle. This is a new format we're trying out, and we're spreading our seminar over a couple of days. And don't forget, pieces of the puzzle prizes. We have 3 Amazon gift cards, and make sure you take note in the recording that we're going to play of what our speakers color and pieces in this presentation. And I'd like to thank our sponsors. We have Bayshore Records Management. We have GRM. And a new sponsor this year, ActiveNav. And you're going to be at the 10 o'clock session here. Robert Smallwood. This is a recorded session. And his presentation is on the state of IG in 2023. Unfortunately, we won't be able to take questions because this is a recording, but we just watched it, Susan and I, and it was super informative. And next session at 11 will be Daniel Freed. He's Director of GIS and Records Management for Sussex, New Jersey, and that'll be coming up at 11 o'clock.
And he'll be here for real.
And, he'll be here for real, exactly, yes. And he'll be able to take your questions. So with that, I think I'm going to stop sharing and let Susan play the recording of our morning session.
All right. Are we ready? I'm going to go ahead and start this one.
All righty. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being able to come to our earlier session. That was short notice, but I think things are going to work out just fine. And that's the man right there. That's Robert Smallwood, who will be presenting today the state of IG in 2023. And you can see what the session's about. We're really looking forward to it. I'm not going to talk too long, but I just want to make sure that everyone sees that, this is the first piece of the puzzle. So make sure you know what the puzzle piece is, and you'll be entered at the end of all our sessions. You'll be eligible for one of the 3 Amazon gift cards. That's what you win. But you have to have all 5 pieces of the puzzle. You have to know all the colors that are associated with all of our presenters. And I think that's enough of an introduction for me, so we can get started with Mr. Smallwood. And I'm going to stop sharing and allow him to take over. Let's see.
Morning.
Is share going okay?
Good morning.
Good morning.
There we go.
Here we are. Beautiful. And we can see it.
Okay. Let me get. Okay, can you see that?
Sure can.
Okay, very good. Thank you, everybody, for this opportunity to present this morning, and start with a little bit of a reschedule, but trying to make it to the AIM conference in New Orleans, which starts tomorrow. And I lived in New Orleans 25 years, so haven't been back, but only a couple of times in the last 10, 12 years. So kind of looking forward to that. So today we're going to cover just a little information governance state of the industry, should be 2023, IG in the news, and the new ISO standard on IG. I've got some thoughts on that. Review a survey we did on M365's role in information governance, and we're in the middle of doing another one. So if you please take the opportunity to do that, appreciate it. And we have a global IG survey we do every fall, and we'll review those results. And we have new results for the salary and compensation survey, which we have done. This is the second annual one, which we finished in February. So we've seen with the Ukraine war, the military secrets were leaked. by a low-level intelligence operative and 21-year-old. And this is one of the most basic principles in cybersecurity that we teach in our Certified Information Governance Officers training class, which is the principle of least privilege, which you hear in the military brass talk about need to know basis. And I don't know, there were something like 21,000 people or something that had access to all these military documents. That's just insane. So that principle needs to be utilized and implemented, and they need better controls over their documents. They need to know where every single document is every time a document is printed. They need, if it's not just a cyber breach, it's an information governance issue. And back last year, there was the Secret Service text that they were told to preserve. And they said, oh, well, we changed their phones, so we don't have those anymore. And, anybody who knows anything about, this business knows that all those texts went through a server. And they went through a server, I think they were using Apple. So, either Apple has them or, well, the NSA would have them, wouldn't they? Or whoever the administrator was on that. So, I call BS on that. I think they just didn't want it to get out. But that's, again, an information governance issue of being able to preserve and produce those texts. And we had, prior to that, the leak of the Supreme Court case. And it was the first time that had happened. And that's, again, we need all these documents to be controlled and the printing to be controlled, the access to be controlled, and an audit trail, 100% audit trail. And if you implement electronic records management with a good, secure document management system, then these issues would go away. Now, I feel like the solution would be to archive these texts and these and any of these requests in real time, so that tracks can't be covered, monitor and enforce with software tools. And I think there needs to be a cabinet level information governance post. They have been talking a while about having a cybersecurity czar, and cybersecurity, traditionally tries to protect the perimeter and keep the bad guys out with multiple layers called defense in depth. And whereas information governance goes about information security from the inside out, we do an inventory of your information assets first, and then prioritize those that are the most valuable, the crown jewels, and then apply protection to those. So even if bad guys do get in, they don't get to the most valuable information. And I was the consultant for Colonial Pipeline before, and I warned them before they had the big ransomware attack last year. I warned them several years earlier, and we had actually identified the most valuable information in their company, which was sitting in an Excel spreadsheet, and that's exactly where they got attacked later. And last year in May, there was a new ISO standard for information governance that was announced, and we're super pleased that this has come about, because information governance really started around 2000 or 2001 with the National Health Service in England, where they required information governance training. And so IG has really only been around about 20 years, and it's only really hit the US since about 2014. That's when the IG initiative started. That's when I published my book on my textbook on information governance, big 440 page, now 525 page in the second edition, and that's when kind of a shift changed. So it's nice that it's there, but they talk about information risk a lot, but what they and it's nice that they're mentioning controls to meet regulatory, legal, risk, and operational requirements, which is actually a sentence almost right out of my book. I wish they would have given me credit for it. But apparently there are like 40 of these conveners, these people that work on ISO standards, and none of them were from the US. And I'm like, well, wait, I wrote 8 books on information governance. What do I have to do? And then I wrote a white paper analyzing this and critiquing it. What I do like is some of the things like it aligns information-related activities with the mission and goals of the organization. This is what we teach in class. Make sure that your IG objectives are integrated with the corporate or organizational objectives, so that you get executive buy-in, and that everything you do in the IG program helps the organization move forward in accomplishing its business objectives as well. But what's missing in this new standard? They don't mention minimizing costs They don't mention maximizing value. Our sort of working definition is information governance is about minimizing information risks and costs while maximizing information value. And this is similar to what the Sedona conference has put out there as a definition, as well as the IG initiative. Another thing they don't have in there is e-discovery. Well, when I asked them about that, e-discovery is a big piece of it here in the US and e-disclosure in the UK. They said, well, you know, there's no e-discovery in Asia and there's no e-discovery in the rest of Europe. And so we have to have a standard that fits for the whole world. So we didn't put e-discovery in. And I'm like, well, what about legal? We have legal and compliance in Asia and Europe, right? But and they mention data protection, but they don't mention privacy. They don't mention business units. But when we look at the IG reference model, business units are clearly a part of that. And they didn't specifically mention risk management as a stakeholder. And I've written a white paper on this standard, ISO 24143. It's on igtraining.org. Or you can also get it for free if you join the CIGO Association, Certified Information Governance Officers Association, along with some other surveys and reports, some of which we'll go through today. M365 report, the Global IG report, 70 training videos from our last Information Governance World Conference, and also job listings and so forth. So now I want to talk about last year's M365 survey. And most organizations started around 2017 on this, and it has quite a bit of uptake in the last couple of years. But outside of the US and UK, they're more likely to have sprung a prompt M365 launch in 2017. But the smallest organizations were also the quickest to implement, which is interesting. And change management, year after year, this comes up as a major issue in terms of the role in information governance and what it and really what you have to do to cement the change, to get awareness and to get a compliance culture. And almost 2/3 of organizations said that it played a significant or a major role, and or substantial or significant major role. And we do we talk about change management in our training. And last year at our IG Leadership Conference, we had Matt Watson, who wrote a book called Nudge Change Management. And Nudge Change Management, I'd recommend that book, is really a way to just incrementally implement change in your organization. In terms of the current M365 users that we surveyed, 72% of organizations were using M365, but it's higher in the UK, 78%. It's actually lower in the US, 63%. And so overall, 72%. So in terms of training, only 40% of the users as of last year were formally trained on M365, and it was even worse in the UK, only 26%. So if you're in the M365 training business, the UK would be the place to be. But what this shows is that really you're probably not getting the most out of M365 because the training isn't there. On average, organizations are using just 3 to 4 of the 10 functions of M365 that are listed here. And retention policies, enterprise search, retention labels, and so forth, e-discovery. And I know Susan DeChico said, well, you know, this kind of gives us a roadmap for implementation, because we can see, hey, what have other people done? Well, it looks like they started with retention policies, and then they did enterprise search, and then they did retention labels. So it kind of gives you a map for how to move forward with your IG implementation of M365. The use of e-discovery tools, 54% of the organizations were using e-discovery tools for legal hold, and 53% are using e-discovery tools through the compliance center. And so that means almost half, 47, 46, 47, are not using this for e-discovery. And we know that IG is the first step in the e-discovery reference model. And so IG plays a major role in that. And only 22% were using advanced key discovery. 2/3 of organizations felt that from a business standpoint, they would like to automatically preserve information. This was, we put this in, there's a new software functionality that a company was releasing, and I don't know if they got it released, but it would allow you to be able to basically press a button and archive documents for those that are needed for long-term digital preservation. So that means 10+ years. So you could just press a button and it would be blown out to the cloud, and five or six copies made around the world, and they use AutoSum, checksum to be able to verify that those 5 copies all stay in sync. So digital preservation used to be a really tough thing to do 5 or 10 years ago, and now much easier with companies like LibNova and Pacifica. About 2/3 of organizations are using at least one of the M365 information security features, and U.S. enterprise, the largest ones in the U.S. are more likely to be using information security. Now jumping to the global IT survey, which we do every year in sort of from June till September and report it in October. And so the role of change management, once again, shows that it was major or reasonable size, and it actually fell a little bit over the year before. We don't know why that is, but when we do next year's or this year's, then we'll find out if this is a trend or if this was just an anomaly, if our audience changed a little bit, or what. It's still a significant role for change management. IT steering committees. This is typically, you're going to have a steering committee made up of people from the constituent groups of the IG reference model. So IT, legal, REM, business units, and privacy and security. And privacy and security have actually been broken out separately now. But in this survey, 48% had a formal ongoing steering committee. Now, I've sat in presentations like at the IAPP Privacy Conference, and they said, well, we have a 3-legged approach to breaches, and we have our compliance people, our security people, and our records or privacy people. And essentially what they're talking about was an informal IG steering committee. So at times these steering committees may be informal. And as of 2021, IG steering committees typically have 6 to 10 members, and that's continued to be the case. 51% of practitioners indicated their organization had a formal or ongoing program, about the same as last year. So we still have a ways to go. I think information governance is just starting to become known and starting to become, get the attention of executives in terms of a holistic approach to governing information. In terms of launching information, launching IT programs, most started about 3 years ago, and this sort of naturally progressed. So some organizations have been implementing IG for more than 3 years, but not a whole lot. So really 2, 3, 4 years ago, and even some here this year, last year. So it's still starting to get updated. Various implementation, and these are pretty consistent year after year. And these were fairly similar to what was found when the IG Initiative did these surveys 5, 6, 7 years ago. And the leading one being lack of awareness, lack of organizational understanding of what information governance is. So you really need to go out there and do some evangelizing and clarify and make it easier for executives to understand that information governance it's not a long big paragraph definition. It's minimizing information risks and costs while maximizing information value, or in short, it's security, control, and optimization of information. So we can see that all of these barriers actually rose past year. So change management's a major barrier, siloing or lack of communications, and ad hoc planning as well. So These are the things you're going to have to face and you should look out for. 36% of IG practitioners reported that an IG program launched within a year of initiation. Back in 2021, it was 70%. So that went down, but we're not sure really why. Back when the IG Initiative was doing these studies 5, 6, 7 years ago, this was something around 9 months. It took, like, once we decided we're going to do an IG program, how long would it take us to get it off the ground? Just that first, initial effort. And so, you can expect 6 to 9 months anyway, just to get things going. 39% of practitioners reported their most recent IG project took less than 6 months to launch. And that was a little high, that was higher by a good bit. That was a little slower apparently last year. I think the year before, maybe they launched more quickly because it was COVID, and everybody was at home working and very focused, and a lot of IG issues came to light in terms of, how are we going to preserve these MS team meetings? How are we going to ensure cybersecurity when we're working remotely and those kinds of things. Here we see the kinds of IG projects that that practitioners completed in the past 3 years. And the first was updating email, info access, RIM, and legal hold policies and procedures. There's an excellent book called, by Louis Eisen, just called Rules or Policies, and it's about how to write respectful rules and policies that people will follow. And we had him speak at the IT Leadership Summit in San Diego, and it was excellent. A full day of just the impact of the wording of a policy can make it more effective or get more compliance than typically approaches in the past. Other projects that have been completed, and this also kind of gives you a little bit of a roadmap of what you really should tee up for your IG program. Defensible deletion of records and content, so making sure that we are meeting our record retention schedule requirements, hitting those once the life cycle has been met, then dispositioning those records. Implement a security awareness training program, implement a privacy awareness training program. Security awareness and privacy awareness, those weren't even in this list 2 or 3 years ago. So these are good, quick wins. You can do a security awareness program for $2 or $3 a month per person, and basically people will have to watch a little vignette or a cartoon, answer a question or two, and then get some points, and you're teaching them about different new attacks that are emerging. Then after that, define corporate governance framework, executed legacy data cleanup. That's another target, just cleaning up these old shared drives and tapes, and then data loss prevention. Those projects were planned in 2022 and 23. Again, policy and procedure updating, data consolidation and cleanup, followed by defensible deletion, and then migrating unstructured information from one system to another. That's mostly going to be going over to M365, and then privacy awareness training. And policy and procedure updating remained the top spot in 2018, which was when the IG Initiative did a survey that was similar, and in our last year's survey, 2021. Key organizational IG drivers. So what forces or what gets organizations to move on information governance? And first of all, just compliance and legal and regulatory requirements. Secondly, cutting risks regarding data that could have been deleted, so trying to avoid risks of over retention. And then just good business management and meeting client expectations and reducing cost of storage, which people used to say, well, storage is free almost, but it does add up. You still have labor, you still have electricity, you have base boring, all that stuff. What are the concerns and threats across the industry? The top 5 concerns, and now assuming the top spot is external breaches, ransomware and exfiltration, personally identifiable information, protected health information, data security and compliance, and defensible deletion, data access controls, and identity access and management. IG program improvements across the industry. We've had the top three areas of growth are really process improvement, end-to-end lifecycle management, and minimizing information risks. And I do like seeing that, information risk minimization is in there at the top. And by the way, we have an event in Chicago, May 24th, which is called the Information Risk and Governance Summit, where we have a variety of people from different perspectives, from information risk professionals to a CISO, top CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, to an underwriter for insurance company that specializes in cyber insurance. So multiple different ways to mitigate your risk. And we're also going to talk about quantitative risk analysis and assessment. So you can actually put a number on your risk, and this is calculated and updated continually. So some new tools are out there. So these are some of the top reasons to move forward. IG program postures, 36% said their organization's program was reactive, 46% said it was proactive. And in terms of IG product, service provider revenue, 67% felt like the organization's revenues would go up in the next year, from 2022 to 23. They were a little more optimistic the year before. I think the economy has contracted a little bit, got some tech layoffs and that kind of thing. Who are our participants? We had 86% were IG practitioners, 11% were consultants, and 3% were sellers at the marketplace. And these are some of the different business segments, mostly corporations, law firms, government. Primarily, 64% had employees of over 1,000. 80% was in the U.S. and fairly focused on legal, energy, banking, government. Here's some quotes from that particular survey. IG has more success in certain industries based on compliance, risk, and record-keeping requirements. My friend Dennis Kessler, who used to be at the European Investment Bank, now he works for Amazon in Luxembourg in Europe. He said that banks and pharmaceutical companies, those that have high compliance requirements, have had the luxury of being required to improve their IG programs because of the forced compliance. And so you shouldn't always look at that as a bad thing. Other organizations are struggling in other industries to keep up. One thing I thought was interesting from the survey that the IG Initiative did in 2018 versus one we did last year was, you can see in their survey, they asked people, this was before IG was really well established. They said, well, what do you think information governance includes? And, top spot was records information management, then information security, then compliance, e-discovery, data governance. And you can see that it went all the way from sort of 94, 89, 88, all the way down to, 55, 45, 44. But then here, we look 3 or 4 years later, and we can see legal has moved into a tie with records information management, and risk management has moved up, and cybersecurity. And you can see these are clustered much more closely. When you start at just, data governance to legal, it's still 86% to 91%. So we've seen this sort of contraction, this agreement that IG includes all of these major pieces. And when we look at the other side here, all the way down, 83, 84, 85, 79, I mean, this is much less stratified than it was 3 or 4 years ago. So I think we're getting more of a consensus of what IG really is here. Now we have the IG practitioner salary and compensation report, which we did in January this year. We did the report in February. It's the second annual. So we have some numbers we can compare from last year, and it was mostly IG and RIM people, but also some people that were in privacy and legal information security. Generally, if you're in the Northeast, you're going to earn about 20% more. We have that broken out in detail. On average, 83% 40% had 10 plus years in RIM or IG, so pretty experienced people. But one thing that's interesting is that if you have IG, information governance, in your job title, those people earn about 40% more than those who have records manager in their title. So you want to try to get your skills up to where you can expand the scope of your job into information governance rather than just records management, and you can then qualify for more pay. The highest paying verticals were software, IT, legal, banking, and then federal government. Certifications matter. The CIGO, people that certified information governance officers earn more. Also, the CIPP, and all of those privacy certifications from the IPP. Base salaries this year, the annual salary was $142,000 versus $140,000 last year. 37% of people in the organizations that we studied earn over $150,000, so that's up from 34% last year. So we're seeing a move in salaries. IT practitioners on average get about 13 company benefits, everything from health insurance to smoking cessation to gyms. And interestingly, women get like one more benefit on average than men, although men get slightly more cash than women, but it seemed to be about balance. Annual profit sharing, about 68% of practitioners reported the ability to get a bonus. So if you don't get a bonus, you might want to point to this result and say, hey, I'm a well-run, operationally efficient organization returns more profit to the bottom line. So I think our group should participate in profit sharing. Typically, annual vacation was 3 to 4 weeks, which is about the same as last year. And IG practitioners work about a 40 to 44-hour work week, and 77% spend no more than half their working time in the office. So, less than half. So a lot of remote work going on. In terms of work-life flexibility, 82% rated their work-life flexibility as 4 out of 5 on a scale of 5. So this is pretty good in terms of being able to handle your personal things as well as work. Training and development. Here's the certification from this year that were most found in our IG survey. The IGP first, of course, the CRM, which has been around a while, then the CIGO, and then actually should be CIP from AIM. CIPM was from IPP. So certainly adding, would encourage you to take our Certified Information Governance Officer training. I know Suzanne and some others have. And, it's a good group, and we have meet and greets and resources. And when you take the class, you actually are assigned a mentor who's CIGO certified. So you have somebody to connect with, and that person will normally be in your industry, or at very least, in your region, close to you. For instance, one lady worked for Jackson Square Aviation, and I paired her up with the lady from Delta Airlines. So they both have aviation. But if you work for a law firm, I try to find a person in a law firm, and so forth, and we pair you up with mentors. If you're in financial services, we pair you up with financial services. And, the companies that have taken this CIGO training include Honeywell, Delta Airlines, FedEx, McDonald's, Walmart, SEI, Society Generale, and many major law firms like DLA Piper, Kirkland & Ellis, and so forth. So we have about 110 certified IG officers. And in terms of training and development, these are the needs that our IG professionals said they needed. They need training in data protection, training in record retention requirements, privacy regulations. Those are constantly changing. Iowa just announced the new state privacy law. Information risk management. Okay, take the opportunity to go to our Chicago session in May. It's a one-day thing. Data governance and security awareness. So for this salary survey, we have about even male and female, 25 to 65 plus around the U.S. It was only the U.S. 20 different industry sectors, a wide range of goals. You can buy this survey online for $195, or it's free with your CIGO membership. And I just wanted to let you know we have InfoGov World. We've done it 2 years virtually. We're going to do it in October in San Diego at the Horton Grand Hotel, which is the oldest hotel in San Diego. Very cool, charming Spanish colonial architecture, and it's where Wyatt Earp once slept. So it's got some history to it. And these are keynote speakers. Justine Phillips, fantastic. I mean, this girl's on fire. She's a fantastic cyber and privacy attorney out of San Diego, and she's now a partner at DLA Piper. She wrote a book about privacy program management she co-authored, which is just came out. Chris Cerdak, he wrote Data Crush and several other books. He was on the presidential transition team for digital transformation, and me. I've written 8 books on information governance, and over 40,000 people have taken my IG class on LinkedIn, and I've trained hundreds of people in person. And so October 2 to 4, we're going to have lots of great speakers, physically in person, on all these different topics that relate to information governance. And I don't know if we have some questions here. There's some chat. Do you see a move away from CRM to IT specifications? I just see the CRM as having been much more mature, and probably not almost everyone, but most people who are going to get a CRM have gotten it. Although they do have a pretty long list, I think hundreds of people that are planning on getting it. But I think certainly IG certification broadens your opportunities, because you're going to have to learn about privacy, cybersecurity, e-discovery, data governance, data monetization, and all of these types of things.
We do have some questions in the chat.
Okay, I'm looking.
Let's see, do you find that certain industries are better at IG management than other industries?
Yeah, certainly the ones that are heavily regulated. So banks, financial services firms, and pharmaceutical firms, and some energy companies are more advanced, and law firms, more and more, just because they have to, because of the kind of information they're handling.
Are we going to be able to get access to these slides? We found some people who really want to take a look at these a little more closely.
Yeah, I'll provide those to you. I normally don't, because people steal my stuff so much, and they don't even give me credit. But this is not related to our training materials, so I'm happy to provide it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And we have also a question about the better wording policy. To get better wording of policies to get results.
Mm-hmm.
That was very interesting. What was the name of that speaker that you referred to?
Louis Eisen, Lewiseisen, and Suzanne. I don't know if you have his book in front of you, or do you have it around?
I do. Yes, I do.
It's called Rules.
What's the name of that book?
I think it's Rules. There's a subtitle to it. Yeah, just rules, and something about policies, make respectful policies that people will follow. And
okay.
Yeah, and it really just walks you through how much different it is to it gives examples of poor policies and examples of well-written ones, and goes through the whole day. So I think that's a really important part of IG, and I think very helpful, that book and his advice. Any more questions?
Oh, we have another. Can you name some? Did you see that question in there from Suzanne?
Right,
Trying to submit them in writing.
Yeah, more change management tools be effective part of the IG program. The only one I'm really familiar with that I like was Matt Watson's book, Nudge Change Management. And I liked it because he gives you all these little examples of tiny little ways to encourage people to move forward, as opposed to just in your face, And interestingly, in our data governance module that we teach in the Certified IG Officers training program, we have Robert Steiner out of Pittsburgh, who he talks about non-invasive data governance, where you just are really formalizing and documenting what's happening. And then you start to tighten it down. And that's really diametrically opposed to, sort of breaking down the silos of, that we do in IT. And, you can't always just crash through those walls and break down the silos. So I think like this nudge change management approach gives you a way to more subtly and incrementally manage change.
Non-invasive, that's an interesting term for it.
Yeah.
Never thought of it. I guess sometimes you maybe do that anyway without even knowing it. I don't know.
Yeah, his concept is that, you're already doing data governance if you're handling data in one way or another. We're just going to first start out by documenting who's doing what, and then determine who are the data stewards, and then, start to document that and then formalize it. And then you can start to ratchet it up a little bit and implement some change.
Any other questions out there? Oh, sorry. No, I don't see any questions coming in the chat or from anybody.
Very good. It's a pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity, and I am the centerpiece. So I'm the green, and so I think it's a fun and unique way of getting engagement in this daily webinar. So I'm the centerpiece, so that's your piece for that. And thank you everybody for the opportunity, and I've got to run and catch a plane.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time out. It was very informative, very good. We appreciate it. And
have a great trip.
Yeah, have a good flight.
Thank you very much. All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, Hutch, we're gonna stop recording.
Okay,
right.
I have to stop sharing here. Hang on one second. How am I doing that? New share? Pause share.
Yeah, just
Stop share. There you go.
stop sharing. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think I'll go back to mine. Anybody see that yet? Or are we still on?
Not yet.
Alrighty. I will start my share. And there we go. Gonna go back to our overview of our seminar. And don't forget, you have their $350 Amazon gift cards that we're giving away. And our speaker just talked about his piece there. He's got that green centerpiece. I'll repeat that. And another look at our sponsors for this program today. And what we have coming up next at 11 o'clock is Daniel Freed, who is the Director of GIS and Records Management for Sussex, New Jersey. And you'll see when disaster is opportunity, they had quite a disaster, a flood there a few years ago. And this is how he and his department recovered from that flood. So that'll be very interesting. Back at 11, so that's in 14 minutes. So I think, we'll all meet back here for that. It's the same session we're in. So you don't have to worry about any new links or anything like that. It'll all be the same session. And we'll meet you back here at 11 for that. And Dan will be here.
You want to advance your slides to Dan's screen?
That I will do. There we are. All right, I can make it stop there. Well, it's just about 11 o'clock right now. I think people are coming into the room. That's fantastic. And on your screen, you see Daniel Freed. He's the Director of GIS and Records Management for Sussex, New Jersey. Oh, it went away, so we can get that back. Oh, there we are. When disaster is an opportunity is his topic. And I'm just going to talk about a few more things today. Let's see. As you see there, this is our format, our new format for our seminar. We're trying this out, having a few different days for our seminar instead of doing just in one day. And remember, it's piece of the puzzle prizes. We got 3 Amazon gift cards, and each speaker has a puzzle piece. Make sure you pay attention to, your speaker when it says what piece and color of the puzzle they are. There's a chance for a $50 Amazon gift card. And we'd like to thank our sponsors. Our first, Bayshore Records Management, and then GRM, and also Active Navigation. Oh, great, I have more people coming in. I think that's fantastic. They're on time. And so I'm going to get on with our presentation and let Dan speak. Daniel Free, there he is, Director of GIS and Records Management. And he's got quite a tale to tell from a few years ago. I'm going to stop sharing and let Tom take over and give his presentation.
Good. All right, share. You guys see me?
County of Sussex, we see you.
All righty. So welcome everybody. Just clear something here. All right. So welcome. This is going to be fun. This is a deja vu experience for me. This goes back to 2011 and is quite the story. But before we get started talking about moldy paper, which I know you just can't wait to get into, I always think it's a good idea. Oh, let me just get something going here. There we go. All right. What do we want to know? Is paper dead? Of course. So I'm going to play a video. Hopefully you can hear it, but if not, I will chime in. Emma. Oh, what are you thinking, Emma? Emma. Uh-oh. Oh, Emma. Ah! I love that.
Ah,
Now we know paper is not dead. Okay. Be afraid. Be very afraid. This could happen to you. All right. Moldy paper. We love it. Okay. So this is my story starting on September 8th, 2011. We had a flood, a disaster. But I chose to make it an opportunity. So I'm going to take you on this journey. It's quite the journey. All right. So the hurricane season, we had Irene come through in August of 2011. Totally skated, no problem. And then Lee came through in September and not so good a result. We had some problems. So when we got started before the hurricanes, this is kind of what it looked like. We had a small record center. We probably had about, I think, 7,000 or 8,000 boxes total. So the good size for us. And we had shelving in one half of it and not in the other. And you can see we had things up on pallets. And Dick was my go-to records management guy, and he was very industrious. And the floor in this place was below the water line, so he had experience with water. So he kept everything up off the floor, which was a good thing to do. But, and we always laughed about his signs, no swimming. Well, that was on September 9th, that all changed and we weren't laughing. So I got a call from Dick. This was Friday, September 9th, after the storm went through. This is the building. And when I got there, I don't have a picture of this, but I want you to, we're going to paint the visual for you here. So this is the entrance. This is a, so there's a little stairway up and a stairway down to the basement. And this was the way we got into the record center. And when I got there, there was a fire hose pointed out the door there, spewing water. And I walked in and looked down the steps, and there was Dick in his fireman shoes. He's a volunteer fireman, so he was able to get a pump in there, and he was there with his squeegee pushing water towards the pump, and that's where we started. And I tell you, it was just disbelief. You just couldn't believe it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here with a timeline. This is a 2-week timeline. I'm going to take you through what happened in the first 2 weeks after the flood. So the first thing was Friday, September 9th. And I worked with Dick for that first day. And, you know, it's like, forget your disaster recovery plan. It's like, well, what am I dealing with here? Water on the floor, get the water out, call administration. Hey, who's going to come and rescue me? What am I going to do? I had really no clue where to start. Talked to the insurance guy. I had a consultant that I was working with that, you know, I called to try and get some pointers. But by the end of the day, we'd kind of gotten the water up off the floor. We'd had 18 inches of water in that basement. And Dick and I were just exhausted mentally and physically, and we closed the door and went home for the weekend. It was like, oh my God, what are we doing here? So we came back on Monday morning, and we spent the next 3 days doing all of the digging around to figure out, okay, talk to an insurance agent, get the adjuster out there. Who's a vendor we can get? Do I have any other resources? How do I get people signed up? And, you know, yeah, we found a vendor, and I'm going to just use vendor 1 and vendor 2 names, but, you know, anybody that wants to talk to me about specifics after the presentation, we can certainly do that. But we did find a vendor. Of course, they're happy to come down and help you with a disaster. And the first estimate I got was like, hey, this is going to cost you $5 million. I was like, okay, well, I'm talking to the insurance guy, and he's saying, well, I think we've got some insurance. So, you know, you just don't know what you don't know. Anyway, we did get somebody lined up. And then on Thursday and Friday, we started working to move things out. So in the record center, you know, some of the stuff didn't look too bad. Hey, it was up off the floor, it didn't get wet, you know, how bad can it be? And we're trying to figure out our inventory. I did have good inventory. So anything that we're moving out now, we're trying to do, these are a couple of my guys, we were taking physical inventory. But then we had this room, 18 inches of water. Guess what happens to a stack of boxes 6 high that the bottom box and a half get wet? It just crumbles like a deck of cards. And this whole place was just a total disaster. And so we were trying to figure out how to even deal with that. So we kind of got started Thursday and Friday, left for the weekend again, and then we come back in that following Monday. So now we're 10 days into the project, and this is what we find: mold everywhere, and it was getting worse by the minute. So now really the question is, okay, who's in charge? Who's in charge? I keep looking around for somebody to come. My boss came out once and spent 10 minutes and he was gone. I never saw anybody else come. It's like, hey, Dan's in charge out there. Okay, well, okay, you're going to put me in charge. I'm going to take charge. And that really, you know, this moment in time was what made all the difference to this project. Because I've heard about disasters like this and people do not move. And, you know, 3 years later, you got this room full of moldy documents and you've got a disaster hazmat situation. So my decision was everything's got to move. Okay. And okay, let's get everything out. The vendor, they ultimately had about 25 people down there. It was raining. We were trying to keep things dry, doing everything we could, putting up lean-tos, start carrying everything out. And then luckily, about a half-mile away from where the record center was on a hill was the old juvenile detention center they weren't using. And I knew it was empty. So I started moving the things that I was most concerned about. We had a lot of court documents and we had planning documents and engineering documents. I did not want those things leaving the county. So I got everybody rolling stuff up there. They had the boys cell block and the girls cell block, and we filled it up with probably about 1,000 boxes. So that really kind of gave me a cushion. And then we got focused back at the record center, getting everything moved out. And we started packing it up, getting it out into the parking lot, putting it on pallets. And I'll stop right here. If you'll notice what happens to a wet box when you put 6 new ones on top, it squeezes down from a foot to about 3 or 4 inches. So anyways, disaster recovery, we're moving the stuff out, and we ended up moving 6 semis of paper out of the record center and up to upstate New York was where it went. Okay, 2 weeks, we're done, we got everything out. Oh, but now what? Well, and I wasn't sure what to do. But now I'm going to take a break and we're going to talk about the project. So you got everything out of the facility. Okay. That was mission 1. So I got that done, but now what am I dealing with? Well, insurance and financing was a huge story, and I'm never going to be able to tell you all the details around that piece of the puzzle, but it was, it was complicated and involved a lot of stuff. Inventory control was the other critical part of this. And you saw what we were doing. We were emptying that room and we didn't have good inventories. I did not have the kind of inventory that I've got now. And so recreating the inventories was a big deal. Finding vendors was also a big deal. Figuring out what they could do, what they couldn't do, what direction we were going to give them. And then project management the whole thing. Okay, so this is what I was trying to wrap my head around. So again, getting into maybe a little detail here. So the first thing, we've got county administration. Well, like I said, nobody showed up. So I was keeping my boss appraised of what was going on, but I was it was on my shoulders, and took me a while to kind of wrap my head around that, but it ended up working out in the end. Insurance agent, he was helpful, but how insurance works, our first estimate from the vendor was this is going to cost you $5 million. Now the good news and the silver lining, which I know is not always the case, is the county did have records, government records insurance. But if you've ever dealt with an insurance company, how many times do they pay what claims you put in? It's like I was scared stiff what I was going to have to deal with here. And then the adjusters, they were another layer of people that were involved with coming out, assessing what was going on. As this thing became more of a high dollar issue, the different layers of insurance were involved. And then it was so complex that the insurance company themselves brought in their own consultant, somebody that understands records, disaster recovery. So we had that person, which was really answering to the insurance company as opposed to me, but they were providing some helpful information. The county was working with FEMA to, across all of the flooding and so forth countywide, and I was trying to get documentation together for them. And then we have the state, for those that aren't government here in New Jersey, we have both the state archives and now Doors, who handle records at the state, and those folks were going to have to be involved in anything that I did with these records. So I'm going to stop here. Access Systems. Now, this is a company who, you know, we would not have been able to get the project done without Access Systems. And I was very lucky. We had been working with Access Systems, and the fellow that owns the company, Steve Goodfellow, had been helping me implement our first on-base EDMS at the county. And we'd been working together for 2 years, and that project was just finishing when this flood happened. So I had a great working relationship with Steve. He's extremely knowledgeable about any and all kinds of records, e-records, paper records. So he was indispensable for me as a colleague to work through this whole thing. And then I've got my staff. So I had set up my own imaging center that had been in place for a couple of years. I am very knowledgeable and came to this whole topic with a lot of background in imaging and just project management. So between Steve and my group, we did have some pretty good resources to attack things. And then, then we had vendor number one. Vendor number one handled the pack out, and all the folks that were moving the stuff out, they were the ones that provided that. They handled both the freeze dry and fumigation of and the rough inventory. But we ended up making the decision that we had to switch vendors to do the imaging project. So I had a vendor number two, and we had to move everything to accommodate that. And then we have the state archives. So this is everyone that was involved. And you can imagine, I mean, I had a day job too. I mean, you know, that didn't stop as records manager. So this was quite the undertaking, and it challenged me in ways that you just can't imagine. So getting back to our timeline, so now I've expanded the timeline out from the 2 weeks to a year and a half. So this goes out to March of 2013. What we're going to focus on is this 9 months right in here. So everything had been moved up to upstate New York, and we now were doing some vendor visits to figure out what these guys could do and how they did what they did. They did have technology for doing the freeze drying. They helped us get things fumigated. We also were relying on them to help us with the rough inventory. They did some initial barcoding. And when we went up there a couple of times, they, of course, wanted to do the scanning. So the strategy on the project was, doesn't look like we, you know, with the mold situation and everything else with these documents, we really, even though they didn't look too bad, they weren't not usable. So we were going to have to scan everything. So that's where we were headed. And they were chomping at the bit. They wanted to set up an organization and help us with that. But what happened during this, and here's some boxes with the barcode starting to get on them. We determined, Steve and I, and then working with the insurance companies and the adjusters, we all collectively made a decision that these guys were not going to be able to, we could not rely on them to do the scanning project. There was no way it was going to happen. And you know, and I look at it in hindsight with between Steve and I, you know, our experience was really what kind of turned the corner there. I could easily see other organizations not being able to make that call because, you know, hey, you know, now where are you going to go? You need another vendor. You got it. Possession is 9/10 of the law. They're going to have all those boxes. They're not going to want to let that go. So we worked it out, but believe me, it was intense. And I went to upstate New York. I had the treasurer give me a $443,000 check to pay for the first part of this work that they had done. And I felt like a drug dealer getting this stuff out of there. I mean, it was, I can't tell you what an intense thing this was. Different vendor involved, got all these trucks in there, emptied their warehouse, and they were not happy. And we were thrilled to get out of there. But now we had another situation. Okay, now we've got another vendor involved, and we got to figure out what we're doing with them. So one of the big problems that we had, we were not able to get a very clean inventory. It was just really a problem getting that nailed down with our first vendor number one. So it turns out vendor number two had a facility in White Plains, New York. So the first thing we did was we headed to White Plains and parked the trucks and unloaded everything, one box at a time, one ledger at a time. And we did a detailed inventory. So here's Steve working the computer, some of my guys, some of the vendors guys, and we're taking everything apart and doing an absolutely detailed inventory. So we would know box by box what we had. And this was a major step forward. We really felt good when we got that done. The other thing, just going back to this, the other thing that had happened, now we're 2 years into the project. So there's a lot of stuff that was past retention. You know, time is moving. And not all these are permanent documents. So we were able to get rid of, I think, 600 or 700 boxes, which was, you know, again, help the whole process. We didn't have to move them again. We were able to get them shredded right here. But now we're moving down to their go-to place was Texas. So we moved from upstate New York all the way down to Texas. And then Steve and I and the adjuster, we went down there for a site visit. So now we want to learn about these guys. They were a lot more buttoned up. They had a great lab where they could do all kinds of remediation stuff. So we were feeling much more comfortable with them. They also had freeze dries capability. I didn't get shots of the other vendor, but they let me take a couple of shots here. So these are pressure vessels, if you will. It looks like a freight train car. And you go over here, so this door opens up. You can see how heavy this thing is. And this is a rack of boxes in the back here. And what they do is they close the door and then they put a vacuum on this, and then all of this, so the boxes are theoretically frozen. So you got everything stopped in its tracks. It's frozen stiff. You put it in here and you never let it go back to water. You go right from ice to vapor and evacuate it, and then you get a freeze-dry box. And it takes about 2 weeks, and when they get them out, then they're dry. They may be a little crumpled, but at least things had stopped and it's stabilized. So then we started looking at inventory, and we're talking to this vendor now about imaging. Of course, they had said, oh yeah, we do imaging. Okay, well, what kind of resources do you have? Now you got to show us. Oh, well, we don't really do it ourselves. We got a third party. Oh yeah, okay. Well, now we got another vendor involved. So we got to go visit them and figure out what they can do and how they do it. And so now this is where Steve and I really, made our efforts known. And you got to define the scope of work. What are you going to do? Understand the vendor, touched on all this. What are the know your agency and your client, quality control, and then this is, where is it going to end up? You're going to put it in the EDMS. Where is it? And then, how are you going to manage that whole thing? So defining the scope of work, and this is something I'd be happy to share. Steve and I put together a 7-page document. We talked about, what's the general scope, and then what type of records, small records, large. We had maps, we had 11 by 17 bound documents, define all of that stuff. And then we had 28 specific line items that talked about the detail of how the documents are going to be scanned, what kind of images they're going to provide, how they're going to do indexing, how they're going to deliver the content to us, all of that. And then also security and handling and access, because they're going to have the stuff down there. And this was still a live situation. I had documents that I was going to need. So we had to work out how I was going to get those in the middle of a project. That's where the detailed inventory came in. And we wouldn't have been able to do any of this without that as a starting point. So with that, we were able to get that going, but I'm going to talk now about quality control and then the benefits of my in-house imaging group. And I think here is something for anybody taking on one of these projects to understand. If you're going to use a third-party vendor, here's the dirty part, dirty secret, is that those vendors count on you not being able to do this. If somebody sent you 100,000 images and said, okay, and I'm going to have 100,000 for you in another 3 weeks, how do you guarantee that what they did is right? Are the images, are they good quality images? You know, is the indexing any good? You cannot, you know, count on them to do it, and they expect you not to be able to do it. So this is where the rubber really meets the road. I'm going to spend some time talking about that. But if you're doing a project and you skate on this, you might as well give it up. You might as well have not had things scanned. Okay, so my imaging group, I had set this up about 2 years before we had the flood. And I had, 6 guys working for me, a couple attempts and 4 people. And so this is the group that really kind of helped bring the stuff into our EDMS. And so now I'm going to expand the story here. And we now are finally at the point where we can start the imaging project. And we're what, you know, 1.5 years, 2 years into the project. So now the timeline is 6 years. Okay, so the whole project ran from 2011 out to 2018. And what I want to do now is talk about the 3 years here, which was the imaging project. Okay, so we had taken the time, we had a vendor, we'd given them directions, we started working, and they started scanning. And then they started sending us deliverables. Okay. Now, how are you going to keep track of that? Oh my gosh. So here's a spreadsheet where we actually keep track of what department, what document type, how much memory was on the drive that they used, and how many pages. So the total for the project, this was the deliverable I received. It was 2.4 terabytes of data. And it was a total of 3,861,128 TIFF images. And we had to QC all of that. So the first step was just to receive it. And the way we did that was with hard drives. Over the course of the project, they actually sent us 22 different hard drives with content on it. They sent one set to Steve and one set to me. And between Steve and I, we were looking at these drives. All of this detail I just showed you on that spreadsheet was what we were pulling off. What document type, what directory are they in, how many, what is it? Let's do some spot checks. Let's have some detailed checks. So we were looking at it. It was a top level kind of thing that was going on. And one of the things that was, well, I'll talk about it here in a second, but this was the 22 drives. I still have them. I've copied all of this content onto a NAS drive that I have as a backup. So this archive still exists, and I could still go in and pull stuff off if I needed to. And this is a spreadsheet that we use to kind of keep track of everything. And I'm going to read off these columns here. So years covered, stored on what disk, and every one of these line items here is a box, if you can imagine. The date of the disk was received, the disk directory, what directory on that hard drive, and here's a catcher, received on previous disk. So for the first, it must have been 8 months, we had all kinds of goofy things. They would send a drive, we would find something wrong. We would tell them that, hey, you got to change this, you missed this, you skip this box, you got to go find that box and scan it. Then they'd send back another drive. Well, it was unclear. Well, did they send us a fresh? Oh no, the original was still on the other disk, and it was a madhouse to try and keep that straightened out. And we finally did get it worked out. any comments, and then we're taking tracking retention. So a lot of detail on each and every box. So once we got all of that content, then it was the task to upload it into OnBase. And for that, what I did is I created for my guys then a guidance document and a little strategic summary. You know, here's the stuff, here's the documents. I'm going to stop here for a second. This may be a little hard to see, but this is actually what it looked like on those hard drives. So what are we getting back from the vendor? We're getting TIFF images, which all have file names, numbers, and then we're getting index. And that's the raw material of any one of these third-party vendors. That's what they provide back to you. And that's what we need to load into our EDMS and match up. So now I have a TIFF image and I've got index values. I have disk 14, audit reports. This is how much was on that disk in that directory. Year 2005, here's the barcode number and a second barcode number. Types of audits. So this is the raw material, and we needed to manage it, and I needed to be able to share this with my guys and then give them these directories one at a time so that they could upload it. And this is another spreadsheet that then became the guidance, because when I was working, you know, we had all this raw material, but I had people requesting stuff. So I'd have to come here, Board of Elections, what disk do they have their stuff on? What directory is it in? Okay, now I can go look for it. And I would go through that raw data and go hunting for stuff and figure out what image and then go scrape it off and send them a PDF of it. So that's kind of down in the weeds there. So now we had these 2 years. So we were doing the image upload and QC that I was just talking about. And just one more step, when we upload those things in OnBase, we didn't just, you know, we would take the indexing that the vendor had given us, but my guys were looking at every single document and checking the index. And if that said 2005 and it was a 2006 document, they would update that indexing. So we did 100% on the intake. And then the other piece that was a project unto itself, the strategy was we were scanning everything, and my EDMS is authorized by the state to hold electronic records, and I can get rid of paper records and request that destruction authorization from the state. But I needed to give them all of the detail in order to, you know, confirm the Artemis numbers. Here's another detailed shot. And I had multiple meetings with the state. We talked to the archive folks because there were ledgers involved, and some of those they didn't want us to get rid of. And so there was a lot of back and forth for us to finally get that all worked out and blessed by the state. And once we did, I scheduled my trip back down to Texas because they'd been kind of sitting tight waiting for us. And here's the stuff they're getting ready to get rid of. And we're shredding in Texas. Here's the ledgers that we were getting ready to ship back to New Jersey and hang on to. And my crew down there, everyone with smiles. I have to do a shout out to Steve. So here's Steve from Access Systems, who was so instrumental in helping me get through this whole thing. And I gave him a call before I jumped on the plane and headed back. So this kind of finished, you know, the machinations of dealing with all of the content. But closing the books was another whole story. You can imagine. So the final cost, we were able to do this project. We were able to. It was just very lucky that we were able to get the funding that we did. But there was $3 million spent on this project. And believe me, getting the insurance to verify, I cannot tell you the tension I felt trying to get all of those approvals every month, getting everything clarified. And when we got to the end of the project, the adjuster was saying, hey, the guy that we've been working with that's been approving everything all along the way is getting ready to retire. We need to finish this thing now. I said, amen. So it was December 13th, 2017 when I signed this final document for the insurance. And I have to say, one of the things that is really, in addition to that, that was so amazing was that this project lasted 6 years. And the group of folks working on this project had been there through the whole thing. I mean, it blew my mind that we were able to accomplish that. And this last insurance guy that was getting ready to leave, I was, oh man, we got to get this done before he takes off. So one of the other pieces of the story, well, I was taking care of all of this record stuff. The other thing that was happening was the county finally decided, you know what, I guess this guy really isn't going away and he's going to have a place to put boxes. And so they actually purchased this space right across the hall from where my imaging center is and where I am today. And we have now 7,000 cubic feet of static storage and a vault with dry fire suppression. And this was in December of 2017. This was happening at the same time. And I think you guys remember me talking way back at the beginning about the JDC, the Juvenile Detention Center. Well, we still had boxes up there until December of 2017. And I had to make note of the last box sitting up there. And here's the OEM guy. So the sheriffs had taken over the building while we were up there. And they were so eager for me to get my boxes out of there. And here's Mark. He was so happy when I took that last box and took it back to the new record center. And my guys and I put that last box on the shelf. And we called this project a success. All right, there we go. Oh, bells and whistles. All right, with that, I'm going to turn it back to you guys and we can open it up for questions.
Oh, hello there, Dan. Let's see. We do have a couple questions, but it's interesting because people had questions earlier, and I thought you would get to those questions and answer them as you went along in your, in your presentation, and you did. You answered several questions for people that they had. One was about if asking if you were going to use a freeze drying vendor, and later on you showed that you did use such a vendor and kind of what it went, all the things that are involved in that. Did you did you look at several vendors for that particular process?
Well,
or did you
you don't have much time. No, I can't quite even remember the process. I mean, that process happened like in 2 days. We had the flood. I talked to the insurance folks. I talked to Steve, and honestly, I can't remember where vendor one's name popped up, but there's only a few people that do this, right? And so it isn't like, no, you don't spend a lot of time shopping. And at that point, it's like, you want to come? I want you here now. How fast can you be here? That's the attitude.
Yeah, so
And
only
someone
a
asked
few
about-
across the country.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And we have a question: why the boxes? Why were the wet boxes sent upstate? Was that
Well, that's where the vendor.
that-
Was.
okay?
And so the vendor one, they had their freeze dry technology is basically a tank truck. So it's like a semi, so they can move those around. The guys down in Texas, theirs were stationary, so you'd have to bring the stuff there. But they didn't bring the stuff down. It was just going to be easier for us to pack it all out, send it up there. And so their freeze dry units were at their main facility, and that's where we went, because then they'd had storage there and they were able to freeze things there as well. Because the thing is, you want to do freeze drying, but you got 6 semis of stuff. You can't do it all at once. So the first thing you do is you freeze things. You want to stop any further degradation of the documents by the water and mold. And so the idea is that you freeze everything. That's the first thing you want to do, which I didn't know, but that's what you do.
And who, oh, sorry, that was the insurance company feedback, right? That got you, that sent you in that direction?
Yeah, they were involved, and I honestly, I can't quite remember how it went because the insurance company, it's interesting. They don't own the project,
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, you have some coverage, but you do the project. You send me a claim, and then I'll see if I'm going to fill it. So it's like you're on the bubble, and it's like that was the scariest part of this whole project because no, it was always a question, are they going to approve, what I'm sending them? And yeah, you do a lot of talking up front, but God's in the details, and there were a lot of questions that came up along the way. It was not, cut and dry by any stretch of the imagination.
And so the boxes that you determined were okay were moved to the juvenile detention center. And then the wet boxes were dealt with by the vendor. So you had some boxes that were good, some are bad.
All right.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And and there were a lot of them that, when we got to that 10th day, everything was contaminated with mold. And the thing about the mold situation, that's another black box. Nobody can talk to you about mold. Is this a hazmat situation or not? Nobody will make a commitment. And so, and that's why it's like, okay, I have to treat everything as a hazmat. Everything leaves. I don't care what it looks like. And honestly, I did have some mold health issues that popped up personally, just inadvertently, sticking my finger up on my mouth. And it's like, oh my God, the next day it was like, oh, geez, I don't feel good. So, that is the scary thing. It's easy to pick a wet box, hey, that thing is a mess. But mold, it's and the box on the outside's moldy, okay, put it in a new box, it's just nobody knows, so that's why, we had to sell that decision because that was a big impact. We're going to scan everything because we can't. Because what happened was early on, when the things were in upstate New York, I had some document requests. And I remember I had 2 or 3 boxes shipped down from New York, and they went to the Treasury Department. And immediately I was getting calls, you've got these smelly boxes here. They've got to leave. It's like, okay, I'm not doing that again. So it's it's a really touchy situation.
And what was your as far as a timeline when you first went into this? Did anybody ask you, hey, when is this going to be done? When is this project going to be done? Or
no, nobody, I knew it was going to take a long time because I knew how long it takes to do scanning. But honestly, the project, I was doing everything I could as we were finishing the imaging project in 2016. I wanted the project to end then. And we just could not get it closed. There were things that we still needed to scan, the things with the state I needed to get worked out. It just kept dragging out. And I'm working with the adjuster, and he said, when's it going to be done? And it's like, God, it should be done in a couple months, and it was like, oh man, this is wearing on everybody. And honestly, when we got to the end of it, everybody was so exhausted with the project that, it actually, some things didn't quite get done the way that we wanted, but, we were out of time and money and effort. And so everyone, just kind of closed the door on it. But, we were well over 80% of the way there. So we live with the 10%, 20% that we didn't like.
So I guess what are the, let's say, top 3 lessons learned?
Wow. Yeah, I think the number one lesson, get your inventory together. I mean, that was the Achilles heel right at the beginning, because we didn't know what we didn't know, you know, and so that, you know, get your inventory together. And, you know, as much as you can do a disaster recovery plan, you're never really going to be ready for it. Hopefully this gives you some things to think about. I think the other thing is that I would encourage any organization, records management group, to have some flavor of their own imaging capabilities. You know, that was instrumental to what we did. And then, you know, have some people that you can call on. You know, Steve was my go-to guy. I mean, you know, that made such a difference. And you know, I think those are lessons learned. And, you know, trying to keep your stuff out of the basement. I'm back in the basement now, and God help me, we've had water down here too. It's like, oh my gosh. So, but I don't know how you beat that. Yeah, that's a tough one.
All right, well, I don't think I have any more questions
Okay.
here. All right, anybody have anything last minute to add to the questions?
I mean, feel free to shoot me a note if you do have something that pops up. That's my email there. And always happy to talk about the stuff. I mean, it really worked out for us. At this point, we're I think, really one of the first counties in New Jersey that's finished its backfile conversion. You know, we've done a lot ourselves, but this obviously made a big dent. We'd still be working on some of this stuff. So it's been you know, just really changed our whole situation here. So it really worked out. So
Well, thank you very much. I mean, it had a happy ending, and a lot of changes were made there. I mean, it's always, you know, it's good to hear that. And I thank you again. This is another great presentation. I think people learned a lot from it. I certainly did. Something I never ever want to go through.
Exactly. Avoid it if you can.
Thousand boxes.
And did you have a
All
puzzle,
right.
Dan?
Say what?
Did you have a puzzle piece?
Oh yes, thank you.
I'm not sure. Is that something I need to do?
Yeah, just know which what piece of the puzzle you are, the color. I sent that to you. Let's see.
I may have missed that.
Hutch can probably just tell us.
Yeah, sorry.
Let's see. Can I tell you? Oh, I'm sure. Let me pull that up in email.
Yeah, let me I did miss that.
Mhm.
Look at my phone.
Sorry, everyone.
A top secret here.
Yes, I
Apparently
had
really
it on a
tough.
chart in my office.
Hold on.
On the wall, but
Hold
I,
on.
of course, don't. I'm not in my office.
Oh man, I'm not. I'm not seeing it.
See. And
Was it on the invite?
Yeah, I should tell you what your color is on that.
Sorry, we're more organized than this normally.
Yes, and I'm sure I'm not in my office to look on my screen there, but I should have it. Hold on, please. I will pull that up.
Oh, there we go. Prize of the puzzle. What am I seeing? No, Bringing in pieces of the puzzle. That was what you called it.
Hold on.
You know what? We
Cool.
know who's on the call right now. We'll get our list from Zoom and we'll send you an email directly with the appropriate color piece.
Yes, that is what we're going to do.
Yes. We can do that. Sorry.
Well, guys, thanks so much for your time and have a good rest of the conference.
Thank you, sir. Amazing as always.
All right. Have a good one, guys. Thanks so much
Take
for your
care.
time. All right. Take care.
All right, everybody, join us again tomorrow at 10. And if you have any trouble getting the login information, let us know. But you should have gotten a little, if you're a member, you can log in, you can go to the events, and that will show you how to register for the second day. If you're not a member, when you registered the first time, you should have gotten a passcode for the second day. Okay. Hutch, did we lose you? We might have lost Hutch. We might have lost Hutch. All right. We'll plan on catching up with everybody tomorrow, and we will send everyone from today the passcode for Dan's session. Thanks so much, you guys. Take care.